So it was just about 3 weeks ago that Tesla rolled out new pricing for all Tesla cars. The Model Y, the Model 3, the Model S, and the Model X. Prices were reduced about $10,000+ across the board. These were huge reductions. And with these new prices, the Model 3 and Model Y are compliant for these new tax credits, at least from an MSRP standpoint. Regardless of the tax credits, a lot of people are looking at these new prices saying, hey, these are reachable prices for me. And for those of you who aren't quite sure if you can reach these prices, today I'm going to talk about the standard range Model 3 and why it is an amazing value. Real quick though, if you enjoy this content and you want to see more of it, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. With these new price changes, also gave us new leasing prices directly from Tesla. Now Tesla traditionally makes you put $4,500 down plus fees, and so your down payment is going to be a little bit higher than you probably would like, but after that, it's $349 for a standard range Model 3. That's assuming you get no additional options and just get the base car in white with black interior. Now, of course, you can go up from there, but $349 a month for 36 months at only 10,000 miles a year, which is on the low side, that is an incredible deal, especially for a $43,000 car. This standard range Model 3 is going to give you the same experience that you would get in a much more expensive $50,000 long range version. You see, the only difference between the long range and the standard range is it's rear wheel drive, it has a slightly smaller battery, doesn't charge quite as fast, but it's still very fast. But everything else is very similar. The stereo system is still very good, and you're not going to get all the speakers around you, but I'm telling you, you will not be able to really feel a difference in the standard range versus the long range. The only real thing that you're going to feel in a difference between the standard range and the long range is acceleration. At 5.8 seconds 0 to 60, it is significantly slower than the long range. But that is about all you're really going to be able to tell as you're driving this car. When you get into a standard range Model 3, you would not be able to tell just by sitting in that car that you're in the cheaper model. That's because Tesla has rolled everything out in a very standard process. There's just one option that you can change on the interior of this car, and that is black seats or white seats. Other than that, you're going to get the same interior across all Model 3s. So obviously at these new prices, the standard range specifically at $43,490 is significantly less than it was not that long ago, but it's not quite as low as it has been in the past, but it's starting to get very close. But even at $43,490, that is not a reachable price for a lot of people, which is why leases are traditionally such a popular option, especially when you get into more luxury priced items. A lease on this Tesla is an amazing offer, and I'm going to show you why. So what I have done is I've pulled the lease offers that are available for a number of electric cars. I tried very hard to keep it as similar to a Model 3 as possible, but some of these cars will have an asterisk next to them because really they're more in competition with the Model Y than they are the Model 3, so they're a little bit bigger. But that said, you're probably going to be kind of blown away on how this stacks out. When we look at all these cars, there's also some differences in the terms. Some of them are as much as 12,000 miles a year, some of them as few as 7,500 a year. These are between 3 and just over 3-year lease terms. And I've also annotated the specific trim level of each of these cars that specific deal is good for. So before I go into too many details on specific cars, here's how this shapes out. When you look at all these cars and then you go back and you sort this strictly by payment, the Model 3 lands right here. It is literally the fourth cheapest EV that you can lease right now, but do keep in mind it does require a $5,544 down payment, and that is that $4,500 plus fees. Also, this lease term is 36 months, 10,000 miles. Again, there's no other trim option differences in this car, so just a Model 3 standard range white with black interior. As you start to look across the board, I really want to zero in on these vehicles that are under $450 a month. So that leaves us with both Chevy Bolts, the Hyundai Kona EV, the Kia Niro EV, the Nissan Leaf. With these particular cars, technically the Bolt EUV is considered a crossover, as is the Hyundai Kona and the Kia Niro. So I want to call that out that technically these are considered a slightly larger vehicle. But that said, the absolute cheapest car that you can lease right now is a Chevy Bolt EV, which is no surprise because that Chevy Bolt EV is the cheapest electric car that you can buy in America right now. So with that $219 payment, $4,389 down, 36 months, 10,000 miles, this car comes with 259 miles, which is very respectable. The 0 to 60 is a little bit slower than the Model 3, but overall, these specs are not terrible. The downside to the Bolt EV, the standard Bolt cannot be equipped with Super Cruise, which is Chevy's version of autopilot. In addition, the Bolt EV is capped for charging, so it cannot charge nearly as fast as the Model 3 standard range can. Now, that's not a big deal if you're not going on long road trips, but if you're ever planning on going on a road trip, that's going to be a big deal. Stepping up to the crossover version, the Bolt EUV will bring your payment up just $20, so $239 with $45.49 down, 36 months, 10,000 miles. You do lose a little bit of range, but nothing crazy. 247 miles range, still really good, and 0 to 60 in 7 seconds. These are still not terrible stats, and that's still a really good price. I think that the Bolts offer a tremendous value if you're not concerned about any distance traveling. So if you're just using this for around town, commuting to and from work, if work's not too far, these Chevy Bolts should be high on your list. Additionally, you can get Super Cruise in the EUV. The problem is you start to really increase price on the EUV, and you're going to have a much bigger lease payment. So this actually is going to flip things around, and to get an EUV that's as close to a Model 3 as possible is actually going to be quite a bit more monthly than that Model 3 standard range. Next is the Hyundai Kona, which is limited to where it's even offered right now at $279 a month, $39.99 down, 36 months, 10,000 miles, 256 miles range, which is really good, but a dismal 8.9 seconds, 0 to 60. That's really not that great. The other issue with the Kona is it's in limited markets only, so you can't get this everywhere, and to equip it as close to a Model 3 as possible, you have to add all the options. That brings you to $41,550, so about $7,000 more than what the spec model is for this lease deal. So that's going to be quite a bit more on a monthly basis for a lease. And the other thing here is you will have Hyundai's assistance program, which is going to give you limited version of autopilot. The Kia Niro EV is quite a bit more monthly than the Tesla Model 3 at $39.99 down, 36 months, 10,000 miles, 253 miles range, 7.10 to 60, which is a lot better. But again, you're limited on that assist system on board with the Kia. The Nissan Leaf is the other vehicle under $450 at $419 a month, $2,179 down, 36 months, 10,000 miles, 212 miles of range, which is the lowest range of all these EVs on this list. 0 to 60 in 7.4 seconds. Now this is spec'd for an SV Plus, which is nice, and that will get you pretty close to what the Model 3 offers. So I think when you look at this, the takeaway should be this. If you're going to use your electric vehicle for anything other than going to the grocery store or going to and from work, if it's not too far, the Tesla is the absolute best value that you can lease right now if that's something you're considering doing. I'm going to take it a step further though, because cost of ownership is another thing you should consider, especially if you're considering a gas car because it's so much cheaper. Maybe it's not quite as cheap as you think. Even when leasing, this Model 3 has quite a value compared to a comparable gas car. I'm going to compare this to the Toyota Camry, and the Camry currently has an offer for the LE version at $289 a month, $35.88 down. Do keep in mind that LE version does not give you nearly the equipment available on the Tesla Model 3. This is a base model car, so you're comparing a base model gas car to a premium electric car. If you look at those total payments over 36 months, plus the $35.88 that you put down, your total cost is $13,992. Doing the same math with the Model 3, your total cost is $18,108. That seems like a $4,116 difference, which is huge, right? That's how most people are preconditioned to think about this. But as you start thinking about electric cars, there's a big difference in the cost of operating this thing. Now, it was very difficult to give you just average numbers, so I'm going to give you two different numbers, one for California average and one for Florida average, which is where I live. Florida averages are very similar to the national average. California, of course, is known for being high cost. So let's look at the operating cost of both of these vehicles over that term. Now, because the mileage is different between these two offers, the Toyota offers 12,000 miles a year and only 10,000 miles a year for the Model 3. I am going to look at this only over 30,000 miles. Right now, the average price of gas in California is $4.628. The electricity cost, 30 cents a kilowatt hour. In Florida, gas is $3.437 and electricity is 16 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, when we look at the Camry, it comes with a combined rating of 32 miles per gallon. Across 30,000 miles gives you 938 gallons. So in California, you would spend $4,339 in gas. In Florida, $3,222 in gas over that 30,000 miles. Over on the Model 3, it is rated at 25 kilowatt hours used per 100 miles driven. Across 30,000 miles, you're talking 7,500 kilowatt hours total for consumption. In California, that would be 2,250 for the 30,000 miles and 1,200 in Florida. So now if you look at the difference, 18,331 versus 20,358. That's a $2,000 difference. And do keep in mind, again, this is the base model Camry, the absolute lowest trim that you can possibly get. So once you step up to a trim that's comparable, you're going to be spending even more than you would on this lease for the Model 3 if you're looking for some of those premium features. Now, of course, if you just want the base model Toyota Camry, it will be cheaper. But my point is, when you make that Camry as equivalent as possible to the Model 3, this Model 3 is even cheaper than a gas car to operate over those 3 years. And if you are considering leasing your next vehicle, the Model 3 standard range should absolutely be on your list, regardless of if you're looking at an electric vehicle or gas. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, of course, give it the thumbs up. If you haven't already, of course, subscribe to the channel as we continue to post content regularly. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Bearded Tesla. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.